consent agenda, the payments, current period May 2010.
All of them, Ken?
Well, I'm interested in the fund summary, budget to actual, which is at the end of the.
Where am I looking here?
Looking at the last page of the thicker one.
And just as a word of reminder, I think Councilor Bunke had asked that we go through these in detail, and when we get a more fuller house,
Okay.
we hope to be able to do that at the next meeting and utilize this package. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't answer the question tonight. But we do want to go through these and have everybody understand what they're looking at and answer any questions regarding it. So.
Fund 601, 602, and 604 on page 3. We have budgeted water utility deficit of $72,000. We budgeted $166,000 deficit in the sewer fund, and we budgeted $137,000 deficit in the electric utility fund. Are we doing anything to try to reduce those? I mean, we know that all three funds lost money in 2009, and now we're budgeting fairly significant losses in 2010. Is anything happening to try to cut costs or increase revenues? Or, I mean, are we just going to let this sit for the year and end up $166,000 further in the red in the sewer utility?
Yeah, well, good questions. I think what we hope we've done, and we don't know this for 100%, is that we've had increases in rates that will hopefully stabilize what you saw in last year's initial returns in the audit. So we've had some increases. The electric fund, I can say with almost certainty that we probably are still going a little backwards, possibly because the electric rate increases were not at a level that were recommended, but they were at a level, and there were still projects and things that came up that needed to be fixed. So we probably have an issue there. We also have just received the latest, the newest rate increase, and so
what kind of percent was that?
it appears, we haven't fully analyzed it, but I'm guessing it's somewhere in that 5 to 6 range. And so on top of what we were short last year, it probably means another potential, and the Electric Commission hasn't met to look at that, but I would guess that that'll be the case. The sewer utility fund, we need to take a little bit closer look at in terms of as we now get into repairing the wastewater treatment plant. I think we'll gain a better idea of what our needs truly are going to be. Some of our budget numbers are just that, you know, they're projections. So one of the things I think we're all finding is that in all of our funds, the higher the rates go, of course, people find ways to be more conservative, and so the usage goes down, and so too we haven't had a rich history of being able to project less usage along with higher rates. And I think there's a point, obviously, where a reckoning comes that you cannot continue to project the same amount of usage as the rates go up. That number has got to be adjusted maybe a little bit more down, and that means, of course, then it has a compounding effect on the rate. It has to be even higher. So that's the part that most of us haven't had the fun of dealing with, and I think that's one thing we're moving through, particularly at this time with the new water treatment plant, the improvements that we need to make to our sewer plant, and I'm confident the electric is just a matter of straightening out the numbers of what we lost in the ground and through poor metering that was taking place, but all that's been corrected. We've spent considerable amount of money doing that in time, so I think that utility is going to straighten itself out. But having said that, then we have a rate increase that we don't control that'll take us beyond that.
Well, we know from what Ms. Schaefer told us when they used 2006 for the electric fund, and the amount of power sold in the city did not really increase in 2009 over 2006, and yet the expenses went up by $200,000.
Yeah.
Are we looking at the expenditures to see if there's any cost control measures that can be implemented? I've been preparing budgets for 35 years, and there's always a little bit of extra.
Well, that may be true, but I think the extra you're going to find here in this particular fund, in the electric anyway, is probably the only extra you'll find is if you take and rearrange what you had done in the past, where you allocated so much of an employee's time to that fund. Certainly you could play games with that.
Well,
and
it just
reverse
makes
that.
the other fund look worse.
Yeah, so I'm not sure that is what you want to do, but as far as looking for numbers that kind of stand out and hit you, I think as next, on the 24th now, we'll have the auditor here, and we can go through those line items and see if, you know, there might be something that you say, that looks strange, that looks too high, and certainly we should take a look at it. We're not seeing that, but that doesn't mean it isn't there, so.
Okay, I just think we just can't sit back and allow these funds to continue, the deficit to continually grow.
Yeah.
Something has to happen, and I'm really, I don't want to raise rates again. I mean, these rates have been raised, and the raises are not keeping up with the increase in the costs, but I sure don't want to be raising them again, so I'd like to find some other way to deal with this.
Well, I think that's an interesting point. The average rate in Minnesota, I mean, you go to these meetings and you hear what's the average group paying. We're not anywhere near the average yet on sewer and water, and that's where we're still, and I know there's pressure to keep the rates down, but the more we stay under the average, the worse it's going to get. And it's going to come to the point where someday some group sitting here will have to have a huge increase to balance those things. So I think the discussion we'll have to have, as much as none of us like to raise the rates because we hear about it, and certainly you hear about it more than perhaps most, we do need to talk about where are we at in terms of the other communities around us. I mean, there's communities that are paying well over $100 a month just for water. And we don't want to get ourselves to that position where we need to see extreme spikes to pay for the assistance we've gotten from the other PFAs and whatnot. So, but it's all good questions, and we've tried to keep, I think everyone's tried to keep the rates as low as possible, but there comes a time when we need to look at our system and value it and say, is it worth it? And if it is, particularly with the water hopefully cleaning itself up and new lines being laid, that we should have a fairly good system that ought to stabilize itself in a hurry.
I hope so.
As a reminder too, the sewer rates haven't been raised since 2006, and then now that we're in the process of doing this work down at the plant, that's part of the PFA thing, is to do a rate study. So they'll be gathering, or the engineers have started doing that, gathering all that information to figure out what the rates could be, should be with the new project that's going to go on.